5 concepts that makes studying GI physiology easier. The first one is motility. This is the bolus after mastication, the movement of the bolus from the buccal cavity till it reaches the large intestine, where it turns to fecal matter. You can see from the oral cavity, according to the diagram here, to the aboral, which is your cecum and the rest, and your anus. So it will undergo peristalsis, segmentation, reflexes, and ulcerations. Then there are some other mixing movements that will be involved, but just know this: motility is basically the movement of the food after mastication, which is referred to as the bolus. Then we have secretion. Secretion is basically the adding of chemicals, the saliva, the hydrochloric acid, bile, mucus, enzyme, bicarbonate, all these things that grind the food into chyme. This takes place from the start when the food enters the mouth, mixed with saliva, gets masticated, swallowed, thrown inside the stomach, inside HCl, then mixed with other acids as it enters the small intestine also. Then the third concept you should know is digestion and absorption. So it is basically what happens in the small intestine and in the large intestine. You can see, according to the diagram here, stuff starts moving inside the cells, cells from the lumen of the small intestine and the large intestine. They move inside the cell, they move inside the splanchnic circulation, which is the blood vessels that are close to the intestines. The splanchnic circulation is very important when studying GI physiology because it is related to the portal vein system, which collects all the veins for almost all digestive organs. Then you can also see what is absorbed, the nutrients, the electrolytes, the water, and then the breakdown. I show this in this diagram over here. So the nutrients are absorbed in the small intestine, and then electrolyte and water are absorbed in the large intestine. So you should understand this concept well before reading up many things. Then the fourth one I'll show you is regulation. Regulation is what checkmates the flow of substances, both from the chemical side and then from the bolus itself. Sometimes the bolus is restricted in the stomach if there is too much acid in the small intestine, or it is released into the small intestine if there is enough space to contain it. So we have the neural regulation and the humoral regulation, which is the sympathetic and parasympathetic, and the ENS for the neural. And then for the humoral, hormones are used to regulate the activities of the GI tract. Hormones such as gastrin, CCK, secretin, motilin, and others. So this is something you should take note of, because if for every steps and for some reflexes, there are usually neural regulation or humoral regulation to it. Then the fifth one is basically integration. Now, the GI system is not isolated. They are all related in one way or the other. So when you read it up, don't read topics as isolated facts, but you have to merge it into each other. How does the gastric contractions affect the large intestine? We have the gastrocolic reflex, where the distension of the stomach actually triggers something similar to the defecation reflex. That's not actually the defecation reflex, but in essence, it pushes the fecal matter towards the rectum. So this is all you actually need to understand GI physiology. When you understand this concept and then you read up the extras around them, you are good to go. Thank you.